Howdy, howdy, and welcome. We are starting another Workshop Wednesday, and you are participating. Today's workshop is actually a What's New workshop. So this is the one that we do once a month where we help you get caught up on all the changes that have come across all the different platforms. Yes, definitely Google Data Studio 1 again as a platform because it's got so many updates, but there is a lot of updates that came through. So we're going to introduce you to all of those as we go through. Of course, if this is your first workshop, welcome aboard. My name is Chris Mercer. I actually do go by Mercer, and I'm the co-founder here at MeasureMarketing.io. And maybe you found us through podcasts and talks that I've given. Maybe it's through some of the products that we've had at Digital Marketer or CXL Institute or Social Media Examiner. Maybe you're already a member of MeasureMarketing.io. However you found us, welcome. We are happy to have you here. Our job is to help people just like you learn how to use all of these fun tools like analytics and data studio and really do it in a, shall we say, maybe not numbers oriented way, but just kind of a numbers friendly way, right? So I get that not everyone's a numbers person. So we have this little framework that we follow, which is where we teach planning, how to actually ask the right questions, how to get the right information to answer those questions, what actions you're going to take based on those answers, all that sort of stuff. Then we help you with the build where you're learning how to use Tag Manager and analytics to store all the answers that you need. Then reporting, we're maybe using Data Studio to build the reports that are actually delivering you answers instead of just information. Super important because you want action and answers give you action. Then there's forecasting, one of the actions you're going to be taking, which of course is forecasting what your next results are going to be. And then you measure against your forecasts. That will tell you where to optimize. So you know exactly what's working and what's not. That's our little framework in a nutshell. Now, the reason we cover this every Workshop Wednesday is because it does put the training in context. In today's episode, where we're talking about this what's new stuff, reporting for sure will be affected because Data Studio had a lot of updates. Building will be affected because there are some updates with Tag Manager. And then also optimizing gets to be affected because those of you who use Google Optimize, there's a cool little fancy feature there. So a few different areas that will be affected. Now, of course, all of our workshops, and this is no exception, just focus on one thing. Now, this type of workshop where it's the What's New workshop, you're going to see a lot of different features. Some you might not even use the tool, so who cares, right? Let's face it. Others you might use the tool and you get like 45 things thrown at you. Data Studio in particular might be like that. So in this case, just pick one thing, practice it. We talk about riding the bike a lot here at MeasureMarketing.io, and that's the concept. Practice the skill, build the skill, then come back, rewatch this workshop, pick up your next one thing, and that is how you build your measurement muscle. All right, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? What's new? The latest updates to Google Data Studio and more. In fact, much more. We're going to dive right in as we often do with our Workshop Wednesdays. And we're going to, dive right in. We're going to go into first, Optimize. Now, this is one that doesn't get a lot of updates, but it did get a very important update in August. And that is this. And if you use Optimize, maybe you've already seen this. If you haven't used it in a while, you might want to take a look because Optimize has actually gone through a pretty impressive slew of updates. They change a little bit how they are installed now. There's probably a little slicker way of doing that. They're separating out their libraries a little bit. It's not as complicated to install it like it used to be. So if you've really tried this tool even a year ago, it was different. It's much easier now to work with. One of the things, and this is the actual update that happened in August of 2020, is this little now correct problems running experiments without stopping them. This is huge. Now, I'm going to do a quick little caveat. What this basically meant, and here's the kind of the before and after. Whenever you had an experiment that you were running, if you needed to, if like you just made a quick mistake on something, you would have to end the experiment, copy the experiment, fix the mistake, and then run the experiment again. Now, Google was doing that because of data integrity, your testing integrity. You want to make sure that you're not mixing data. But it was a huge pain in the butt to go forth and do that. And other platforms didn't make you do that. So I get their hearts, I think, were in the right place when it came to that. I like the direction they were going, but real world, it just doesn't work as well. So now you can actually, when you're in an experiment that's running, I actually don't believe I have this one here, but it's personalization. But you can actually have an experience that's running, change it midstream, and then keep it going. Then you can just push it back into the flow. Now remember, just good optimization strategy. When you're doing, especially if you're doing split testing, you typically don't want to do that if you have a lot of data corrected. If it's really the beginning and you're testing stuff and you're having to tweak it because you're needing to correct something, no big deal, right? But if you're halfway through an experiment, you've had thousands of hits and people coming through and you've got a ton of data, and then you change the experiment and then you continue testing, it's not going to be reliable results. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you use this tool responsibly. But specifically, you can now do this. And that was a reason people didn't like it. So it was nice that they did this. So any experiences can now be paused, adjusted, and restarted without you having to officially end them and then recreate them. So just a little mental note there. Now we will come back to Data Studio because Data Studio has the most changes. I want to spend some time on that one. But before we do that, I want to bring up a couple of other things. One, with Google Analytics, there wasn't a tremendous amount updated on either the app and web or on of course, the regular universal analytics, but this was updated. So Google Analytics has updated their mobile app. The reason they updated the mobile app is to account for app and web, which is, of course, the new Google Analytics that's coming down the pike. And you're going to be hearing more and more about that as the years go by. Now, again, you don't have to be using app and web as a platform to make your own decisions yet. I don't think it's ready for that. I don't think anybody thinks it's ready for that. But you need to start looking at it and being aware of it. And, of course, we've got win courses at measurementmarketing.io that you can go through and take a look if you want to learn more about that. But the update, of course, was this new app. I want to point out one thing. And I know, because I've done stuff like this before where you put something out and you go, oops, that was a mistake or whatever. One thing I did notice with this new app is this started happening. So again, Play Store, my guess is iOS looks kind of the same. When this update came out, there were a lot of fixes that evidently needed to happen. So and evidently still do pretty recently. So it does not. If you were using the mobile app, and to be honest, I wasn't using the mobile app because I'm in desktop constantly. It's what I do for a living. So I'm always on the desktop. So I've never really needed the mobile app. I haven't found a use case for it, me personally. If you have, you probably won't like this update is what I'm gathering from all the people who were using it and now think it's horrible. But if you were not using it, and I wasn't, I started looking at it and I was like, oh, actually, this is maybe a little more useful now. So take a look at it. I obviously have it installed, so you can see that here, but take a look at it and see if it's something that might be good for you, because again, it just opens up to all the different versions of analytics that are coming down. So make sure you look at that. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, and this was moving off of Google Analytics into Facebook Analytics also, which sadly doesn't really have a whole lot of updates coming through and hasn't for a while. They were doing really good for a bit, and then it just sort of tapered off. And if I'm Facebook, I will really want to put some emphasis in this platform because Google Analytics is quickly coming up, right? They're making a platform which is the app and web analytics that's kind of this. So, they might end up lapping Facebook again. This was Facebook's competitive advantage, the way they did analytics, but I don't know that they're going to keep that. But the update, it was this. So up here, and you again, if you're using analytics or haven't been in analytics, you'll then see this. But the idea is Facebook was deduplicating events because people accidentally fire a bunch of events. Facebook realizes that. Ideally, you're not doing that because you have Tag Manager, which is in control, and you would use Facebook Pixel Helper, and you would know that you're not firing duplicate events. But on the off chance that you are firing duplicate events, Facebook was deduplicating them for you. They did that within a 24-hour window. Now they're doing it in a 3-hour window, which I still think is an enormous amount of time. But now it's 3 hours. So if there are two different events that come through that are the same event, Facebook will deduplicate them. So in that case, if you're having a lot of deduplicated events within the 24-hour window, you might see your event count start to go up quite a bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a bunch more activity on your site. It could, and this is really the key of this particular update, especially if you haven't really driven traffic or done anything to cause a big increase in events. If you notice a big increase in events all of a sudden with Facebook, it could be that all those deduplications are just not being deduplicated. There's a lot more that were going on back there, and now they're not. So just a little mental note there when it comes to Facebook Analytics. Finally, before we get into our winner, which of course is Data Studio for the updates, this is a very close second. Now, here's why. It's actually one update, which is Tag Manager is now offering server-side. This has been in the works for a long, long time. They announced this a long, long time ago, but now it's like a thing, which is why we're featuring it. It is now available to you. You can get here. So this Google Tag Manager server-side. If you just Google it, you will find it. It'll take you to the developer site, Tag Manager /server-side. That is where you go. Now, that said, Again, this is one of those things I kind of am thinking about it like app and web, where we're using app and web, but only to get used to how app and web works. We're not actually using it for marketing decisions yet. The platform's not totally cooked yet. It needs to have a lot more going into it, and it certainly will. But now's the time to get your training wheels and start to learn this. I'd say the same thing with server side. And we're going to give this a little bit of time, in particular, because at least as of this recording, MeasureSummit 2020 is coming up in just a few short weeks. And I personally know Simo Ahava himself will be giving a talk on server-side tagging GTM. So I'm going to wait and watch that myself, and kind of get some feedback on kind of what the next steps might be. And of course, we're going to play around with it and kind of report back some things. I'm sure we'll do some workshops on it for you as well. But this is the new hotness when it comes to Tag Manager, so server-side tagging. And there's lots of reasons to do this. I will also say there is a Google Analytics blog, and I will bring that up very quickly. So if you go, I believe it's just blog.google right here. So blog.google/products. And the Google Analytics products, you'll see this is the actual post that you can go read kind of about their announcement that they were doing. There's lots of reasons to do server side. Just don't think server side's going to, like everything's going to move to server side. I think there's a little bit of restriction back there. There's going to be a bit of a learning curve on how this thing works. It's not going to be exactly like Tag Manager, like using the browser right now. So, and it's not something you have to do tomorrow. So don't think like, it's just, this is one of those updates you need to be aware of, and you will be experiencing, and you should probably get some more experience with, right? So just in terms of like, okay, being familiarizing, that was what I was looking for. Get a little bit more familiar with Tag Manager's server side and kind of what it's like, and play around with it and start setting up some stuff that you're not really going to use in the real world yet, but you're using it to play around with, that sort of stuff. And take a look at this. So just know this is huge. And again, this is very, very big. This is not going away. This is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you will have to start doing this. So it's just not, you don't have to do it now, but relatively soon. This is definitely one of those 2021 skills you're going to be improving upon. So I wanted to make sure you knew about server-side tagging that is officially available from Google Tag Manager. Okay, so with that, finally, let's go ahead and bring up our buddy Data Studio. So we're going to come back in here. We're going to go to Data Studio. And we're going to go through some of these changes that were kind of housekeeping-ish stuff. I'll kind of make you aware of, and we'll kind of do a little laundry list of some things. One particular change that is massive, and you absolutely have to know about. You have to know about this. It's amazing if you're using Data Studio. If you're using for clients, for your stakeholders, for yourself, it is super cool. So we're gonna talk about that in some more detail. But first, I want to go through and talk about all of the little nuances that came out, just for those of you who are like, hey, I need to, good to know that. Specifically, Google Ads connectors. If you're doing anything with Google Ads with your data in here, so you can add some group ID stuff. They have advertising channel subtypes, that are available, some things like that. Google surveys. So if we go into, in fact, I'm just going to come in here and pretend we're doing a blank report. When I come in here now, there is a new connector for Google Surveys. And we haven't used Google Surveys ourselves, or I would connect it in. I should start. So if your company or if you're using Google Surveys, you can now connect that in. That didn't exist before. This is new. So from Google. So Google Surveys, if you're using those, this could be a cool thing for you as well. There's a lot more. They started opening up the API as well. BigQuery started getting 15-minute refreshness, and now BigQuery data could be a little fresher, and BigQuery is a big thing that people are starting to move to and learn more about. So you have that as well. And there's one other, again, a bunch of fields in Google Ads. So I'm not going to cover all the fields in Google Ads. Just know that if you're using Google Ads, and if you didn't have access to something last month, you might have access to it now. There's a bunch of different stuff that now is available. Google Maps did some changes where how they visualize some things in Google Maps is two different ways, either by bubble or by polygon. So you can kind of do that. And I'm going to show you kind of what that looks like, just so you can kind of see. So this is kind of like, you can do it like this, where you visualize Google Maps, or you can do it like this, where you visualize Google Maps. So just kind of some cool, like I said, remember I said they were sort of like weird nuances, fringy sort of stuff. This isn't going to matter at all if you don't use Google Maps. But if you do, this could be pretty cool. So you've got some controls over that. The thing that I really want you to be aware of, the thing that I think you're going to use the most when it comes to Data Studio, and I'm going to go back into our example report here. So there is a new way, and hopefully you've done this, where you have these little filters where you can say, I want to see different sources, or I want to, whatever the thing is you want to do. Oh, one other thing before I jump into this. I want to make sure you see this. So there is when you come into a field, when you go to create a field, and if you've not done fields, you should. Fields are amazing, and creating them is fantastic. So you can come into here and say, I'm just going to create a new field. You can do something called a case statement. Now, this is not new. It's been around for a long time. So the case statement's been around for a long time. And the way that the case statement basically went is you would say case, which is kind of like, this is like an if this, then that type of thing. So case, and then you would say next, you would say when, and then the field names, let's say campaign. Let's put that in there. So when campaign, get the entire thing. If I can get that to type. So when campaign, campaign code, hang on, type in the wrong one. Let's just go a little faster. So when campaign, there we go. And then you could say equals, win, or whatever the value is. Then you could return back win courses. I want to call this win courses, or whatever the thing is that matters for you. So you could use this for whatever. And you would basically do this, and it's not going to be exactly like this, but basically it's going to do something along the lines that looks something like this, right? And you would just change the values, and then you would say end. So basically this. So case, when this happens, then return this, and if it's this, then this, then it's this, then this, right? And you just change these values to match whatever you want. So what they've done is they've simplified this a little bit, because as you can tell, it's a little complicated to type these things in particular. So now all you need to do is you say case, and then you do campaign, or whatever the field is. So I'll just pop that in like that. And then you can take this other stuff out. So now it just looks like this. When it's win, or, whatever, put in your value, right? And then it would look like this. So it's a much simpler version of case statement. So if you do a lot of this, and those of you who's worked with Data Studio for a little bit, you might be starting to do this stuff. And if you're not, look at case statements. They've been around forever. So it's not a new update in terms of that you can do this. It's just how you do it has been simplified a little bit. So now you say case, and then you look for what's the field that I should be looking for. When that field equals this, then instead I want this, whatever my new campaign code or whatever you're calling your field, then return win courses or this. It's kind of like a lookup variable in Tag Manager, or a regex table variable in Tag Manager. So same concept. And Data Studio can change things. You change your reports that way. So this is just the new simplified version of doing that. So very, very important to go through and think through that. Also, when you're copying reports over, it will embed the data sources with the reports so people can edit stuff too. That was another big change that came out with August. And I told you there was a lot of changes that came through with Data Studio. A lot of them are kind of housekeeping stuff, maybe things you don't necessarily notice. This case statement is one, because hopefully you've used this, or again, if you haven't, play with this one as to think about what use cases might you have for this. If the product name is this, then return back a better product name. If the SKU is this, then return back the actual product name. Things like that is what you can use this for. So it's really, really useful. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel out of these, so we don't need that. Okay, so now the thing I want to show you, we're talking about filters and how you have these little filters. And so what is now added, the way you get filters were up here, right? You used to have this little pyramid thing. It said that was it. It was like, filter. Well, now it's called add a control. So in this control, you now have various things. You can do the drop downs, which we all know and love, right? So there's a little drop down. So same thing as this. So there's your drop down. So we know that. Now that's called a drop down. Then there's now fixed size lists. So you can go through here, and I'm going to go into some empty space. Actually, I guess I'm not. Tell you what. Let me just exit out of that, go into one of my famous blank pages. Okay, so we'll clear that out. So now I'm going to go here, and we're going to say fixed size list. So now you have this. Now remember, think about how your stakeholders use this, or how you use this. And so now you have a list of like top 10 traffic sources or whatever. You can pretty it up, and then you can select this, and then it would control all the data. That's all the different charts that are on there. So you have that interactivity ability. You also have input box. Now, why is this cool? Because all they need to do, it says, in this case, area code, because it's pulling from sample of Google Ads. And so it's like the area code. You type in, what happens is, in fact, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to show you. Advanced filter. So we have that. We're going to put in the slider. So we're just going to put in that. And then we're going to put in checkbox. So we have that. All right, so I'm going to move some of this to Google Analytics. So sample Google Analytics just to pull in some details that we have here. And then this was our slider. So I'm going to say this is like users. You know what? Let's do source. Hang on. Let me pull this up here. So I'm going to say control field. There we go. Year. Nope, that's not letting us work. All right. You know what? I don't know that I did that right. So let me make sure I got my right data analytics. It looks like version 1. That still should work though. Let me just pull this into ours so you can see it. Okay, so we have that into ours. That's fine. We're not trying to do a non-number. And now we're going to do users. We're going to pull this over. And this is not letting me get rid of this. Come on, man. Okay, so this is not working for me. I need a number field, which users is, and I do not know why it's not letting me do users unless I just didn't come over across right. I don't get it. Okay. I'm at a loss as to why that is not working here. However, I'm going to come back to that, I think, a little bit later. I want to show you some of this other stuff here. We're going to come back to these because I really want you to see them. I just haven't set them up myself, clearly, because they're brand new, but I want you to play with them. Okay, so we have interactivity here. Enter code, right? You put in whatever the code is, and then what happens is now you've got user ability to enter. That's the whole point of this, is users can play with it. Country code equals whatever, right? So you can change this stuff to put in a user selected value. That's the whole point, is the user now is controlling what data is displayed instead of you just pushing it their way. So that you have that as well. And now I'm going to go back and I want to show you, I'm just going to show you some quick examples of this so you can see it in action, so to speak. Give me just a second. Okay, so we're going to use this. I'm going to bring this over. Okay, so this is our controls that you now have actions to be able to set up. So you've got the filters, which you already know about, right? The regular filters. But now you've got all these different ones to come through. So data options, this document will actually go through everything. So you can actually go through and set it up. You got style options. You got input boxes. So what the data is and the style. So everything in here you could possibly play with to go through and set this things up. The idea is that the slider is actually a slider. I was hoping they would show a actual example back here in this one, but they're not. And I know we have some things set up, but we're not quite ready in our demo dashboard yet that we do at MeasureMarketing.io, where I would show you that. But I really wanted you to see this because it was an update that just came out toward the end of August. And I think it's important for you to play around with this. But it's just going to drive me nuts that I cannot get this to, for some reason, let go of the fact that it got its date and it thinks everything in here. Let me just see this. It thinks everything in here is of course it's not going to work. It keeps thinking it gets all text. I have no idea why this is happening. All right, let me just try to see if this is a glitch. There you go. Just a glitch. All right, gotta love that. Yes, of course, in value configuration, that's where you're deleted. There's our slider. And I'm gonna do the same thing here. So this was what was that? Not an event. That was an advanced filter. That's what this was, the advanced filter. So we're gonna do the other one. Delete that. It was a checkbox, I believe. And then it's still coming up Google Ads. I don't want Google Ads. Stop doing Google Ads. Sample Google Analytics. This is why I love doing these live. You guys get to see how it's really done in the real world. And then the control field, let's say source. So we're going to pull that over. That is clearly not working. Let's find out. So details. Source is a string. It needs true, false. Okay, so we need, that makes sense. I don't have any true, false. So I can't even show this one. So that's not going to matter. All right, so session duration, the slider, big deal. That's what I wanted you to see. So you go to view, and then what would happen, theoretically, is you can now pull the slider and say, show me just sessions with this or that or whatever. Think revenue. You could do it with revenue. You could do this with user counts, right? Anything along those lines that's a metric, you can sort of set a slider, and then all the reports on that page would actually be controlled by this, because that's what it is. It is a control. So super cool stuff that's available to you now in Data Studio, and that is going to be my mic drop moment. I was going to leave that out there because Data Studio did a phenomenal job with that stuff. So knowing that stuff is back there now, just the fact you can do user controls is really the thing. So again, some of them not the most intuitive thing. You might have a little glitch like I did, but it should work the second time. The way it worked faster the second time is what actually should happen with that. But play with it because those things are super cool. And once you get used to them, I'm sure a lot faster. This is why Julie from our team does all of my dashboards. I get to just say, hey, I know it can do this thing. Could you please build it? And she does an amazing job. Okay, so what we are going to do is move on. Hopefully you got at least one new thing. For me personally, it was the user-controlled stuff that is now available in Data Studio. That's the biggest deal. I know server-side tagging is a close second. For me personally, and I use Tag Manager all the time. It's still a close second because it's just not ready yet for prime time for what I use it for. But it's really interesting. So it's something that it's going to start being something I'll be using for sure within the next 90 days. But like I said, I'm gonna wait for MeasureSummit 2020 and what Simo talks to about that. Now, if you want to learn any of this stuff, measure.tips/courses, we got a ton of stuff for you to learn. If you would like to take some courses and improve your analytics or measurement skills in any way, shape, or form, when you're trying to learn measurement marketing, we can help you out with that. Measure.tips/courses will take you there. If you are wanting to stay tuned for new topics that we have, including next week's topic, which is getting started. So it's for the beginners, and we're doing spreadsheet tips and tricks. This was something that was actually suggested by one of you, actually, one of our viewers, who said, hey, I want to get, I see spreadsheets all the time, but I don't know spreadsheets. And just of course, yeah, we got to cover that stuff. So we're going to do some basic spreadsheet tips and tricks on some things that, even if you've used a spreadsheet before, which hopefully most of you have at this point, this will be some additional things to make it a little bit easier. It's some things that I know I didn't know for years when I was using spreadsheets that I use all the time now. So we will cover those for you. And that is available if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. So please do that, as well as if you are a Toolbox member. So the Measurement Marketing Toolbox membership includes all the stuff in the Toolbox. So there's Workshop Wednesday, the Traffic Tracking Toolkit, all sorts of other tools and resources that we are constantly putting back there for our Toolbox members. So you have access to everything. This is not just the tools. There's like a bunch of tools back there. It's kind of our way of giving back to the measurement community. So go back there. It is completely free to get all of this. How you do that is just go to measure.tips/WW. If you're already a Toolbox member, awesome. And of course, if you're already a Win Monthly Pass member or a Measurement Marketing Academy member, you of course already have the Toolbox and then some. So thank you again for being members. Finally, before we sort of wrap this whole thing up, again, I mentioned MeasureSummit a couple of times. I want you to go to MeasureSummit if you haven't already, because this is date sensitive. Now, this is free to attend. So I'm going to go in here. This is actually what it looks like. Or look approximately like this when you see it. So MeasureSummit.com is all you need to do to go there. It is sponsored by Supermetrics and, of course, Verified Data, Measurement Marketing, and Measure School. So we're all putting it together. You can see the speakers. Those of you who are in measurement at all, you're probably following most of these people. So you can kind of see who's there that's actually going to be speaking. Our very own Aman Kanani. So there's just a ton of incredible people, incredible topics that people are giving up their time and energy and value and investing it in this process. It's amazing. We have thousands already registered, which is great. And today, as of this recording, it's September the 2nd. So, we're doing this on a Wednesday, September the 2nd. This thing doesn't happen until the 22nd. So we're still roughly 19, 20 days away. And Julie and I both, Julian from Measure School and, of course, myself from MeasurementMarketing.io, are co-hosting it. So we're going to be your hosts. We're going to kind of walk you through everything. We'll introduce you to the speakers. And, 19 days, 22 hours remaining. That's where we are. So here's the agenda. You can take a look at that. And then, again, MeasureSummit.com. We're going to keep this updated with everything. If there are any changes, which we don't expect there to be too often, it'll be here. So you have all of this fun stuff. Again, thank you to Supermetrics for sponsoring that. It's amazing. And also an incredible tool for you to take a look at. But it's going to be a really cool event. It is completely free to attend. So be sure to get your ticket there. Just go to MeasureSummit.com, pop in your name and your email, and you would be off to the races. And I look forward to officially, or at least I guess virtually, seeing you at MeasureSummit 2020 on September the 22nd. And again, 4-day event, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and 25th. So just a ton of value. It's going to be amazing. And like I said, Simo is going to talk about GTM and server-side tagging. So be sure to be for that. Charles Farina is going to talk about app and web. So if you haven't really focused on app and web and Google Analytics, he's got a great talk on that and goes through the basics of it. So there's incredible stuff that's back there for you. So again, MeasureSummit.com. Be sure to register for that. And again, don't postpone that because this is a time-sensitive thing. Once that's over, it's over. So MeasureSummit.com. Get your ticket, and then we'll make sure you get all the details to attend. All right. With that, it's time to officially bring this Workshop Wednesday to a close. You've just watched What's New, the latest updates to Google Data Studio, and more. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.